Whether you're a life coach, therapist, biohacker, invested in wellness, or in the healthcare profession, if you have an intention to work in psychedelic spaces, you're in the right place then. If you're called, get involved. But first, get informed. Let's talk the 4 N's: intake, intention, in-space integration, leading to deeper transformations. Psychedelic Coach Podcast, Tah Cole. Walk you through the process, it's all possible. Leave space for the follow-through. Most importantly, integration is not optional.
Welcome to the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. This is Tah. I'm excited to be diving in today to talk about the trap of modern victim culture. And before we get started, I want you to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. Share this with people, y'all. I am encouraging you and inviting you to please share this with people. We want to get this information to as many people as possible. So if any of this resonates with you, please share this with someone you love. Psychedelic Coach Podcast, y'all. Today we're talking about the trap of modern victim culture. And I did a masterclass on Masterclass Mondays about this, and people really loved it. And one of the things that we teach at the Condor approach is the oppression trap triangle. And one of the corners of that triangle is the victim. And for me, a huge part of my life, a large part of my life was spent in a space where I was claiming victim. I was victim to everything. I was victim to physical attacks from my brother. I was victim to not having the care and loving that I would have desired from my parents. I was victim to crack ravaging my neighborhood and people stealing stuff. I was the victim to everything. And I claimed this in my life, and I made this a huge part of my existence. And a big part of my openings through my explorations with psychedelics was the recognition that I had been playing the victim to everything in my life. And since I was playing the victim, something had to rescue me from the villain. And it was either me, if nobody else was doing it, I had to turn into the victor, or I had to turn into the hero myself and rescue myself, or I had to seek that assistance outside. And so since I was the victim, I was always in this position to perceive that I was the recipient of harm. I was the recipient of hurt, of wrongdoing, of damage, of deficit, of loss, of injury, the threat of death of some aspect of myself or my body and my whole existence in the world. This was a huge part of my life, y'all. And if this sounds like you, I really want you to sit back and just soak up what I'm going to talk about here. Now, if you haven't listened to our podcast on the oppression trap triangle, we've done a few of them. The last podcast I actually did was on subtle victor spaces, subtle hero spaces. And I spoke about the oppression trap triangle in that as well. And I'm just going to break it down really quickly here for you in case you've never heard this podcast before, so that you get a quick overview. But I want you to go back and I want you to listen to this. This is one of the things that we teach at the Condor approach so that we can empower our coaches and the people who are looking to integrate their psychedelic experiences optimally with. So the oppression trap triangle is an adaptation of an age-old triangle called the drama triangle. Now, this is an adaptation of the drama triangle. The drama triangle consists of the villain, the victim, and what you would call the hero. And the hero is the person that rescues. This is the person that's the savior, the martyr, the hero, the rescuer. All of those roles fall into that archetype. So that person is what I would call the steward of righteousness. This person is there for righteous reasons. And those righteous reasons are to rescue a victim. Now, that victim can be a person, that victim can be a society, that victim can be a house or a car. A victim can be anything that is subject to hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, or pain. Now, the next position on the triangle would be the villain. The villain is what I call the harbinger of malice. This is the person that is actually bringing something malicious to the victim, or they are perceived as bringing something to the victim. So if I saw somebody in the street that I thought was going to hurt me and I hid, I'm already projecting that that person is a villain. without actually knowing what's going on. It might maybe because of my past historical data, things that I've learned, sequences that I've had occur in my life in the past. I will project a villain onto that person, regardless of whether or not that person is an actual threat to me. That's the second angle on the triangle. The third angle on the triangle, or the first, depending on where you're coming from, is the victim. The victim is the most powerful space on the triangle. This is the person that I refer to as the guardian of peril. Peril meaning something that's dangerous, something that's harmful. Okay, so at the Condor approach, we call them the 7 attributes of violence: hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain. Those are all things that stop a person from being whole. And anything that stops a person from being whole is what we consider violent. If I insult you and that you take that as an injury to your identity or what somebody else may think of you, that is an injury. And so now I may become vigilant because I am defending my identity, and my identity may be the victim. So anything that happens in that realm is perilous to the individual. Now, when I did Masterclass Mondays, I spoke about this at length. And I spoke about this because victim culture has been coming up a lot in the form of cancel culture, right? Cancel culture is a trickle down of victim culture. In order for us as human beings, as a race of beings, as cultures, as communities of people, in order to cancel somebody, we must perceive that the person being canceled is some sort of villain. And if we're perceiving that person is a villain, we will cancel them. Now, I'm not saying that people don't do things that are inappropriate or off. I'm not against being in any of these positions in a triangle. It's the awareness of the triangle that's important. So in cancel culture, it requires that there is a villain. And if there's a villain, there requires a victim. And in order for the villain or the victor, right, the hero or the villain to even exist, there must be a victim. And this is why we say that we are living in a victim culture, because the foundation of our culture is the focus point of victimhood. I need to be rescued. That person needs to be rescued. Someone help me. Someone save us. The government's coming to rescue you. The church is going to get you into heaven. All of these things put us in the stance of the victim, the person who is at risk for being made unwhole, or the person who is unwhole because of the villain. That's it. The victim's not a good or a bad thing. It is a thing. It is a space of disempowerment. So knowing how you're feeling about this dynamic unconsciously is a really important thing. And this is what we teach about at the Condor approach. We teach about this dynamic. And what I want to talk to y'all about is how you're feeding this dynamic unconsciously and what to do to actually move out of this dynamic. So again, a victim is a person who's subject to any sort of violence and or a person who identifies as being subject to some sort of violence. So when we think about the victor or the hero, that person may come to the aid of a person who's asking for help. I'm being victimized. I'm a victim. Someone help me. Or the person may not even ask for help. A person may not even see themselves as a victim, and somebody jumps in to come and rescue. That's coming in without permission. Now, I want you to just reflect for a moment in your life as you're listening to this. How many times has somebody tried to come to your rescue and you didn't ask for it? If we didn't live in a victim culture, why would somebody need to come and assume that you need to be rescued? These are the things that I want you to open up into considering. These are things that come up every time there's a psychedelic experience or a group. These things are going to come up. When I was facilitating psychedelic experiences, I would sit with the people that I was working with and I would take them through the triangle and I would say, hey, listen, what do y'all think about this? And they'd be like, wow, this is quite profound. And then when they went into their experience, they would be able to pinpoint all the places that they were stuck in this oppressive dynamic. Anything that stops a person from being whole is a violent act. And anybody who perceives that they were or still are under attack and titles themselves as a victim is a person who is playing the victim role. Now, the culture that maintains and supports the long-standing identity of people being in that space is victim culture. This culture will fabricate and justify reasons for identifying people as victims. This kind of stuff justifies wars. It justifies a prison industrial complex. It justifies all of the things that create oppressive dynamics. And victims tend to identify themselves as survivors, helpless. I'm helpless. I'm weak. I'm poor. I'm disabled. All of these things are spaces that people can hold on to and make them into identities. And I've had a lot of people rub up against me when I say these things. Well, I'm a survivor of this disease. Or I'm a survivor of that disease. How could you say something like that a survivor is a victim space? And I'll say, you don't have to associate that. I'm bringing this context to you so you can understand where I'm coming from. I'm not saying that a victim is a bad thing. A victim is a person who holds on to the identity that something has happened to them and they are subject to it happening again. And so the strategy is to stay in that space. That's it. And I've gotten a lot of flack. Well, this person is disabled. They don't have arms. Well, I know people who don't have arms who are more able-bodied than I am with their feet. They can write, they can type, they can drive. Right? They can comb their hair, brush their teeth with their feet. And so is it disabled, or is it that this person has a situation and a circumstance that they've got to move around? And they may have to move around it with themselves. They may have to get support from other people. That doesn't mean that they're being rescued from something. Now, there's a difference between being helped with something and being rescued from something. There's a distinct difference in that space. They can overlap, but they're not mutually exclusive. So the question I have for you as you're listening to this is, do you identify as helpless, weak, poor, disabled, a survivor? And it's just a question to ask yourself. There's no judgment here. These are just questions, because it's going to get a little clearer as I move forward, or maybe it won't. When I did this at Masterclass Mondays, it got a lot clearer as I moved forward when I spoke to people on this. So there's victim language, and victim language can be heard. And this is something that I listen for and I train facilitators of psychedelic experiences for, that I've trained coaches for. I can't. I'm not enough. I don't have enough. I never win. I'll never have anything. Nobody cares. Nobody helps. Nobody listens to me. Nobody wants me around. These are all victim language spaces. So I ask you again, do you find yourself using these things regularly? Do you know anybody else who uses these regularly? And it's not just the I-centric space, I-centric being me, right? It's not just about me. But what if I project these things? You can't. You're not enough. You don't have enough, so you need help. You need to be rescued from your plight. You will never win. You never have. Nobody cares. Nobody helps. There's nothing wrong with these statements. Again, are you projecting that? And are you fortifying somebody else and staying in the victim stance? Or is it like, okay, you're unable to do it at this moment. What do we need to do to get you to where you can? So that you're not talking about you can't, right? I'm unable to currently, or I don't have the skills currently to get through this. I don't have the resources. So what do I need to do? We need to get the skills. We need to get the resources. We need to get the energy. We need to get our confidence to shift that I can, I will, and I do. These are all very important things. And when we talk about the confidence continuum in the Condor approach, and we've done a podcast on it, go back and listen to the episode on the confidence continuum. I can, I will, and I do. These are the things that are very important. A person who claims victim may not have the strategies to get themselves away from the circumstances that have caused them to be in hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, or pain. And so what I can do as an individual, instead of rescuing somebody, is offer, hey, would you like some support in moving away from this dynamic and getting secure so that this dynamic doesn't happen again? I'm not rescuing that person. I'm supporting them in empowerment. Empowerment is a very important space when it comes to moving beyond the victim culture dynamic. I'm just going to take a breath because I've been talking nonstop, baby. This is a topic that really excites me, y'all. I'm so excited to talk about this because I've seen so many people at the Condor approach. I've seen so many of my clients open up when I teach them about this stuff, and it's changed their lives dramatically. It's changed their children's lives dramatically. It's changed how they've interacted with money and their work dramatically. And these things always come up because they come up in all of us. So if you're having psychedelic experiences and if you think that these things aren't going to come up, they are. I've sat with people and people are like, my mother keeps doing this to me and my mother's such a terrible person and I can't get away from my mother and my mother's this horrible, mean person. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? May I ask a few questions? Cool. Yeah. If I get permission to ask questions, of course. So what do you want to do with that? Where is your position in this? Are you feeling empowered? Just ask powerful questions. Are you feeling empowered? What would it take for you to be empowered so that this dynamic would not have you in a stranglehold? And we ask these questions. The hero's journey is something that's baked into all of our stories, all of our storytelling. It's baked into our media. It's baked into comic books. It's baked into our movies. It's in our theater. It's in everything. It's in our books. It's in our video games. It's everywhere. And the hero is the person that perseveres, that rescues themselves or someone else or a society of people from some villain, from said villain. And they get to the mountaintop and they're slaying the dragon. And this is something that our society has been built on. And do we need it anymore? That's the question. Do we need to continue this? Now, that's an age-old question, and it's a question for you as an individual to ask yourself. I'm not here to tell you that it's right or wrong, that it's good or bad. I am here to tell you that there's a trap of being in victim culture, and the trap is disempowerment. When we stay in a disempowered space, we have to look outside of ourselves for fortification. Now, not for support, for fortification, like somebody else is actually doing the deed, fixing everything, holding our hand, making everything right for us while we stand by and witness. That is rescuing. Okay, it's not the same thing as being supported or helped. And being rescued can include being supported or helped. I just want to make that really clear. One of the things that I tend to come across is if I'm being subjected to violence, how am I not a victim? How do I not identify as a victim if I'm being subject to violence in the form of hurt? Am I being hurt by someone? Am I experiencing harm? Am I having things taken away? Am I experiencing loss? Do I not have enough? Am I in a deficit? Am I being injured? Am I getting ready to die? Am I in pain? How do I not identify as a victim? What I usually talk about is the difference between being victimized and identifying being a victim. Being punched in the face is being victimized. I have been victimized, right? I've been punched in the face. Now, would you call yourself a punching bag? I'm a punching bag because somebody punched you? No, right? If you fall down, you fell on the floor. Are you a fall downer? Do you identify as a fall downer if you fall down on the floor? No, right? But if you're victimized, you take this title and you hold on to it. This is why I call it the guardian of peril. When a person takes that title and they hold on to it, I am a victim of assault. I am a victim of robbery. I'm a victim of the United States government, right? I am a victim of the IRS. I am a victim. And you hold on to that, you make an identity out of it. And once you make an identity, this is one of the things we talk about at the Condor Approach, 2 constructs, right? An identity is a construct. When you make an identity of that, out of something, we embed that into the body, and then the body actually enacts around it. And it creates the reality of that construct. And that construct is what we become physiologically. And so just thinking about this conversation, y'all, how many of y'all know somebody who has had the same type of malicious act happen to them over and over again by different people? I know I have. How many people know somebody who's gotten into car accidents over and over again? I know I was one of those people, right? And I know plenty of people that this always happens to me. This always happens to me. And they attract it. It's not just the law of attraction. You're actually getting your body to resonate in a particular frequency tone that drives things to you to affirm the identity that you have. I'm broke. I don't have enough money. I don't have money. And your body will find every circumstance. It will vibrationally attract every circumstance that gets you into that space. And so this is one of the things that's quite profound about psychedelics is victim language is a form of self-deprecating speech. I'm going to say that again. Victim language is a form of self-deprecating speech. This is a speech that puts you down. And when you put yourself down, there's a frequency that your body changes into to support that dynamic. And when you go into psychedelic experiences, you can actually loosen the network in your brain that supports that type of dynamic so that you can move into a different dynamic. And this is why people come back from psychedelic experiences feeling brand new, like they can move beyond things that they couldn't before, because there's an actual physiological program in the brain and the nervous system in the body around that type of thinking, around that type of behavior and that type of thought that keeps bringing these things to you. And this is why once you have a revelation that you've been playing this game for a long time, it's important to have an integration protocol to support you after your psychedelic experience so that you don't fall back into your old stuff. Just because you go in a psychedelic experience, you have a breakthrough and you can change, doesn't mean it's going to be long lasting, because you still have the propensity to go back to the old grooves in the ski slope. Okay. So please be mindful of this, y'all. If you need help with integration, come to the Condor approach. You don't have to be a coach to come to the Condor approach anymore, y'all. You can come to a 3-day and really learn about these concepts and get in with the community, get into the mighty networks, and really hone in your integration stuff. Teach your family this. This is not just about psychedelics. This is about life. Does this make sense, y'all? If this makes sense, please let me know. Shoot me a message on Instagram. Shoot me an email. Let me know that this makes sense. And if you want me to dive into this, say, hey, man, can you expand on that podcast? Because I really want to hear more about this. So what can you do about this, right? What can you do about this situation? Well, we talked about the oppression trap triangle, and we talked about being stuck in that triangle. Because if you're in the victim space, if you can't get out, chances are you're going to lean into what? Transforming yourself into the victor to rescue yourself from the villain. And if you keep seeing yourself as a victim and you rescue yourself, you have to find a villain in order to substantiate that. This is one of the things that I saw as a nurse, right? I've been a nurse for 31 years. One of the things I saw as a nurse is people coming to the hospital to find a diagnosis for them feeling terrible, be it physiologically feeling terrible, emotionally feeling terrible, whatever it was, they were looking for a diagnosis so that diagnosis could be the villain. And they could blame the diagnosis. This is coming to get me. This heart disease, this cancer, this whatever it is, right? This depression, whatever it is the villain. And so we move into this space where we see these illnesses as the villain, and it substantiates us being in the helpless victim space. And so we may not lean into evaluating all the aspects of our lives, the sour relationships we may be in, the people around us that may not be fortifying us being in ease so that we stay in disease and the disease becomes illness. These are things that are very, very important to consider when you're talking about the oppression trap triangle. So how do you get out of this? The first thing to do to get out of this, right? And I want you to write this down. The first thing that you got to do is be aware that you're actually stuck in the trap, in the triangle. Why do I keep having the same stuff happen over and over again? I keep feeling this way. I want to feel something different. This is where it's like, hey, man, I'm aware. Then the second part is, write this down, awareness of whether or not you're holding the victim identity. Are you in the triangle? Are you in the triangle? I'm playing the victim role, right? I'm holding on to the identity of victim. It's not just that I've been victimized. I am claiming that I'm the victim. I'm the victim to this person or that system or that company or this unfair circumstance. Claiming it. I'm not telling you to change it to fix it. I'm just asking you. The second part is just be aware. Now, the next part, I am asking you to do something. It's stop playing the victim. Okay? And this is probably one of the most challenging things. How often have you been told to stop being who you've been most of your life? Yeah, leave that pause there. How often are you asked to stop being who you've been all your life? And if you've been playing the victim all your life, it can be really challenging to stop. And this is where you get support. This is where you have community. This is where you have people hold you accountable. Hey, listen, I'm just checking in. Are you still doing this? This is not having somebody rescue you. This is having support. This is having somebody on your team that's going to support you and moving beyond what you've been doing. That's getting out. That's getting out of the triangle. Now, the next thing to do is flap your wings like a condor and fly out and above the triangle and kind of turn the triangle sideways so you can look down at all the, and I'm not saying look down like they're bad. I'm saying so that you have a bird's eye view at all the spaces in a triangle. look at the villain. Look at the victor. Look at the victim. How can you get out without playing any of those roles? What do you need to do to be empowered? And this is where you come up and make a strategy. You make a strategy around what you could possibly do to not have to do this. This is a place of empowerment. And the fifth thing is courageous effort. The courageous effort to take that strategy that you've created and move into a place of empowerment where you are not holding on to the identity that is keeping you small. The victim space keeps us small, y'all. And it's okay if you want to live small. That's perfect. This podcast and the things that I'm doing are for people who want to move beyond living small, because we've been teaching our children how to live small. We've been teaching our spouses and our partners how to live small. We've been teaching our employees how to live small. We've been teaching our friends how to live small. And I, for one, am done with living small. I think there's enough room for us all to live in our fullness, y'all. I want you to be in your fullness. And if you want to play small, that's cool. I'm not going to knock you on that, but this isn't the game for you. Okay. So this is the game right now. What I'm talking about is the game for people who want to play big, people who want to really live and want to really see other human beings live. And when we can all live together, there's no poverty, y'all. When we all have enough food, when we all have enough water, we all have enough shelter, we all have all of these things, why would we need to take from someone else? If we need to take from somebody else, it's because we don't have enough. And that person who's taken from somebody else, we consider the villain, right? They don't have enough of something, whether it's food, whether it's water, whether it's affection or attention, whether it's love, whatever it is. If they don't have enough of it, they are the victim. Now, the villain knows the victim more than anybody because the villain has always been a victim. So I want to make sure that you understand these dynamics, y'all, when you're moving forward in your life. Lean in. Empowerment is the most important space. Having awareness, having support and resources, asking for help, and creating strategies for yourself for empowerment. That's the Condor perspective, y'all. And I really appreciate y'all being here with me today to dive into the trap of modern victim culture, cancel culture, any type of culture that is claiming that somebody is a victim of anything is a culture that is fortifying these dynamics. And it's very challenging when that's all we can see is violence. We got to step back. And it takes a few people to step back and step outside and not play the game and say, okay, cool. Yeah, this is terrible, right? These dynamics look horrible. So what is the strategy? Blaming people and saying this person is this and I have to kill this person or do this is not going to stop the dynamic. We've got to step outside the dynamic and strategize, y'all. And it starts with these conversations. So I'd love to hear from you. Please hit me up. Send me an email. Hit me up on the Condor Approach Instagram account. Hit me up, y'all. Let me know. I'd love to discuss this. If you have something in regards to this that may be an opening for people in this space, let me know. Let's get you on this podcast and let's talk about it. What is victim culture? We talked about that. Knowing how you're feeding this dynamic unconsciously, we talked about that. What to do to move out of this dynamic, we talked about it. Please share this podcast with someone you love. Go back and listen to it again. Join us for the next Condor Approach, y'all. We have the Condor Approach in Austin, Texas, 3 times a year, every February, every June, and every September. This year, we have 2 Condor Approaches happening in Utah. One is in May and one is in June. So we have a lot of resources. We have free resources. We have our podcast. We have courses. We have a 7-day audio course. We have lots of stuff for you to dive into so that you can integrate your psychedelic experiences. And remember, if you're not diving into yourself and really seeing how you can put these things together and tie all these pieces together after your psychedelic experience, there is something that you're missing. Psychedelics are wonderful. They're a wonderful adjunct. They're a wonderful tool and support for human beings to expand themselves. It is not the cure-all for all of the things that are going on our planet. Thank you, y'all. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to having you here with me again on the Psychedelic Coach Podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, share this with a friend. I love you. Be easy, be free, Sourcey Poo. And don't forget,
integration is not optional.